Hello and welcome to Milestone Mindset Live. I'm Nancy Sargent, your host and founder of Sargent Marketing and the Milestone Marketing Blueprint. Milestone Mindset Live is a somewhat weekly show where I have guests that help convey a story of how they applied mindset and milestone achievements in their life and their career that has led to helping others in all sorts of fields: education, healthcare, finance is what we're going to be talking about today, associations, manufacturing. And we are here today with Anita Shrivastava, who is going to help us talk about financial tips for a variety of folks, including business owners, nonprofit leaders, individuals, and a special favorite of mine, little segment for early career folks. Good morning, good afternoon, Anita. How are you?
I'm very well, Nancy, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Actually, I said good morning. In some areas, it is morning, other areas, it's afternoon. I was texting with a friend from China last night, and literally it was 12 hours the next day already with her. So that was really fun. Anita, I was saying to you before we began how excited I am to have you as a guest today. We've recently met through an association that I became a member of, and I was really impressed with your leadership there and your energy and really your approach to life. And when we got to know each other a little bit better, and I saw how you applied that to your own personal way of thinking of finances and how you advise your clients, I I wanted you to share with my audience and then in turn with yours as we share this afterwards. So I would love it if you would take a moment and tell us a little bit about your journey as you wish to today and what brought you to this point of being at service to your current clients.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I've taken the most scenic journey, but that helped provide me more perspective, I believe, in what I do every day for my clients. So I've been passionate about finance since I was a kid. And I went to grad school. There I went for international finance and development economics at Columbia. And some of you may be young, some may be older, but you know, while a lot of changes happened in everything around us, particularly technology. So these are pre-internet days, and when I was in grad school, we didn't have something like the Netscape Navigator. The internet was just about getting started, fiber optics being laid out, lower cost of communications. So when I was graduating graduate school, unlike typically where people go to become a faculty, I wanted to like roll up my sleeves and actually really extend what I've learned in the business realm, not just in the theoretical realm. So I joined a think tank. It was part of Ernst& Young called the Center for Business Innovation. Our mission was to anticipate and shape the future of business. So in
Hold
some
on. That's huge.
yes.
That's really what I love. Go ahead. You
and
shape
and
it.
we and yeah, it is huge, and honestly it was appropriate at the time because there it was business was going through tremendous evolution. People couldn't have imagined we're no longer going to go to Barnes and Nobles and we'll start taking out books at Amazon, and no one considers Amazon to be in the business of selling books even, right? So huge transformations, and Ernst& Young had the Fortune 500 companies who wanted to figure out how are these new technology trends going to change their business strategy, go to market strategy, how do they incorporate pricing strategies, delivery, all the rest of it. And so we were sort of the consultants to the consultants who helped senior executives visualize what business might be 3 to 5 years down the road and how they can transform their business to keep pace with the sweeping technological change that was going on. Around then, there was also huge changes in the financial institutions, a lot of legal regulation changes, the change of Glass-Steagall Act, and consulting was sort of at its helm. It was great. So I joined this think tank. We were an eclectic group. We were intentionally housed in Cambridge, Massachusetts, because that's where a lot of startups, technology companies, Google was just figuring out all of its algorithms. Facebook was still happening in the backyards of Harvard. It was fascinating times. It was fabulous. I was there for about 6 years as an economist, financial, and strategy person on staff. Now, one of the things we didn't anticipate was 9/11, which
Mhm.
kind of precipitated the collapse of the technology, which was, at went from really hockey stick growth to a really precipitous fall at the time. And consulting was affected as well. So that's when I kind of moved in from that area. And I figured I'd take some time off. My kids were young. But as I moved into northern New Jersey, I became very active in the nonprofit area, became president of the Women's Club, Education Foundation vice president on Rotary, and lots of things because, I really enjoyed being rolling up my sleeves, but working in a volunteer capacity. And I learned a lot about nonprofits, the boards, and so forth. But at the same time, what was happening was people were just naturally approaching me for all kinds of financial advice because I was managing my own financial because life for the family. Because this is what I
Mhm.
really am passionate about. I'm passionate about capital markets, investment, just overall finance. So that motivated me to want to pursue a career in professional wealth management. And I know I've kind of bored you with this story, but I kind of
No,
walked
I
in.
don't think it's boring.
Is I literally went in and I approached, at Morgan Stanley in a branch which is really close to home because I figured I have something to offer. And they recognized that immediately, but hired me as a specialist in financial planning for all the advisors in the branch. And that's kind of how I started my career in this space. Went ahead and got myself a certified financial planning designation because I believe planning has many caveats, many aspects from investment management to retirement planning to tax management, estate planning. So there's lots of aspects of it. And I wanted to be in the comprehensive financial planning industry.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then over time, my teams changed. I transitioned from Morgan Stanley over to Merrill Lynch. But the one thing I realized was it was the transition from sort of doing a lot of theoretical job thinking to the application in individuals' lives and making them live the best possible financial life makes it very gratifying that I can put all the sum total of what I've learned in my academic experience, professional experience in different industries, in nonprofit, and then applying that to sort of middle age, which we are people, because that's when your complexity in your financial life is at its maximum.
Mhm.
And for the vast majority of us, we can still not just tweak, make tremendous difference now. That'll set us up really well for what is to come. So it's truly gratifying. And so that's kind of what I do. I help individuals, I manage their finances, help them with financial planning, and set them up with having the best possible life with the financial resources they have, taking into account all aspects from their estate plan to taxation, investment management, and so forth. So that's sort of a long way.
I appreciate that. And there was a real reason that I wanted you to go through that story here. We don't always do that on the show. But I think what you did is what people actually do now in the way their careers go and are managed. I think today your path is actually accelerated on even a quicker change pattern, let's say. But it's not, honestly, when we started, right, we had these jobs, or we've both been entrepreneurs. And so I say I'm not even employable anymore. I've been an entrepreneur for so long. I'm hireable, not employable.
Uh-huh.
And but I think, and so I think we kind of did even a segment for the young people up first as well, but really of any age. Change is part of careers now.
Mm-hmm.
And you were educated, trained, and that doesn't have to be college, whatever anybody wants to do. Being trained is important, continuing to train. Certifications are terrific. And then you had a life change and the industry change. COVID, I mean, what you talked about there has happened to
Mhm.
people of all ages during COVID. And some have not landed back on their feet the way they think they should already post COVID. And I mean, you can't go online or pick up a publication to know that it's not the case. Everyone has not landed squarely where they want to be, but you volunteered. So you never stopped being of service. And then, therefore, you never stopped learning. You always had a toe in the water in your career and professional interest, and you married it to where you were in life and where life was around you, etc. So that is really why I wanted you to tell that story. I do think it is um, something that everyone has to realize. So thank you for
Sure,
that.
sure. And we
Yeah,
can plan our career, but we're going to get things thrown in our way all the time. And learning and pivoting or transforming and retooling, I think it's going to be absolutely the new norm. Yeah.
absolutely. And with that needs to be good health, and with good health needs to have good financial health.
Yep.
So this is bringing us into the part of our conversation, which is a little more tips oriented in the finance subject. So one of the things that we talked about was to have you open up with just a few general financial tips that you like universally for people to know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's wonderful for people to get some. It's very basic, and none of this is going to be like you didn't know. But if you do them sequentially and start them early in one's professional life, it really sets up a strong financial foundation on which to build on. So first, everybody knows, create a budget, right? The budget should be 50% in needs, 30% wants, and 20% savings. It's important because sometimes, we buy put too much in real estate and houses or rental money versus, so forth. So that's the best way to think about it. After creating that sort of budget, you want to do is make sure you don't have bad debt. That by that we mean credit card debt, because no matter what you'll do, you cannot consistently earn 16 to 18% in markets, whereas that's pretty much what you'll be paying in credit card debt. So
Mhm.
eliminating that would be an important idea, at the very least reducing it, and there are many ways to do that. Then move on to paying yourself first, which is setting aside 3 to 6 months of money as emergency reserves, which is if something were to happen, a medical emergency, a car broke down, a boiler broke down, it could be anything. Could you have enough funds to fix that without any change in your living situation, your investments, and so forth? And Nancy, you'd be surprised. About 56% of Americans don't even have $1,000 saved in an emergency fund. And that's important because it can create quite a upset in your planning. The next after that, once you've had that much money put aside, for sure start investing in your company retirement plan for two reasons. One, it reduces your taxable income, so you're paying less in taxes. Another reason would be most of the time companies give matching money. So you're leaving money on the table if you don't contribute. And actually, last but not least, it's very good to start saving from retirement early because the compounding effect and the discipline that a retirement plan provides, because if you withdraw money before, there are penalties. So that commits you to that course of action and the time it needs for the money to grow. And just people forget, but you can borrow for pretty much everything except retirement. So you got to start thinking about that for yourself pretty early. And if your company doesn't offer you a retirement plan, then create one. The government has given a lot of tax incentives as a way for people to set themselves up for the future when they will be retired. So now, when that's all is done, is that start opening an investment account, create a disciplined strategy where you can dollar cost average a certain amount of money every month, so that you catch maybe the highs of the market, but the lows of the market. And it is set in a way like automated, so it gets done. We always think, oh, I'm going to invest when it's going to be down. Market timing is a huge fallacy. It's not going to work. You never got nobody. If someone's telling you that they can time the bottom, they're lying. It's there's nobody has a crystal ball on that. So having a discipline makes sure whether you'll catch up, you'll catch down over time, you're getting invested because it's not timing the markets, but time in the markets that makes all the difference. And then after you've done that, the reason this is important is all of the previous foundation was about savings. It's about cash and cash equivalents. That doesn't grow. It can barely keep pace with inflation. So this investment is really the money that's working for you rather than you working for the money. And it needs time and it needs to grow. And the only way it can grow is in a diversified portfolio, depending on lots of factors, that there's a certain combination that's suitable for people based on their risks, their time horizon, the kinds of jobs they have, the exposure and savviness and sophistication to financial instruments. We create diversified portfolios, which is what is built to grow, to not only outpace inflation, but to actually even amount to more, because besides working and getting promotions and your salary increasing, there's nothing else that makes what you have, your net worth, increase. It's really the investment account, right? And then at this time only you should be creating a financial plan, because now you have become fairly, there's plenty of complexities with different financial instruments and strategies, that it's good to have a financial plan so you know what your short-term goals are, your long-term goals, and then know which money is working towards what, and you're set for that. So that's sort of a little foundation to get people. And the financial plan is a little bit more detailed then, because then we don't just look at assets, we look at liabilities. Smart leverage is a great way to build net worth. We look at risk management techniques, how to buy types of life insurance, so that if there are bigger emergencies that your emergency funds won't cover, the big ticket items or risk items are covered by life insurance, term, whole life, health. There's health and disability, things that may take away your income. So that those are things that will go into a financial plan. And as one gets older, it builds into it an estate plan about, well, when my life is over, my financial plan's over, all of that becomes a estate. How are we making sure we minimize expenses, the probate, the headaches, and how do we set ourselves appropriately with trust, wills, durable powers of attorney, healthcare directives. So that comes later, but it's always good to be thinking about all that. So
I think we should take a breath here for a minute.
that was pretty, I'm sorry, overwhelming.
No, what was great about what you did was you really painted a long-term picture, a good overview. And it's important for folks to think about that, because holistically, that's where everyone hopes to go. Again, I'm very mindful of that folks right now, in many cases, are at any point along that way, including starting over, tweaking, pivoting, all those things. So I love that we just had that foundation. I do really want to remind everyone listening that what my takeaway is of what you said, Anita, is discipline, consistency, and commitment to know where you'd like to go, hopefully while doing something you love or something that allows you the time to do what you love in your life. That is the ideal that you painted. And I think that's a good primer for what we're getting into. And you gave, good general tips to know what's possible.
Yep.
So as we take the next step and we segment a few of these specific areas, I'd like to jump ahead to tips for business owners specifically.
Yeah. Yes. So all of that applies for individuals in some sense applies to business owners as well, which is, yeah, you want to, so when people start off, like, you understand, as an entrepreneur, but if you are starting a business with more than yourself, with the growth trajectory or ideas, most of the time business owners don't pay themselves. It's important to pay yourself. Figure out what that salary is, because you're investing the time, and it's part of the expense, the cost of running the business, and it helps with better projections of what expenses should be. Then invest in growth. So yes, um, when we think of lots of things we want to do with the money that we can, but some things you can either take the money now or reinvest, like something like Apple's done so incredibly well. They may just reinvest in the business. They just launched another new iPhone because they're not just concerned about growth today, they want to set themselves for future growth, right? So think of all of the ideas that just not helps manage the business now, but it's also helping it grow. Now, here is a little distinction between individuals and business owners. Individuals, you want to be prudent in borrowing. Here, as a business, it's the borrowing and smart leverage that helps with the growth. There isn't so much hesitancy businesses shouldn't have, as long as they have a sound business plan, good ideas on which they will spend money that will spur future growth. But having, you know borrowing, whether it is creating equity in their own company or borrowing from other sources, is important. um, Another reason is, unlike individuals, if you're a business, you do have available, bankruptcy protection. So it's not as if all is gone and you will not even have your home. Most of the time you have some protection around that. So it's a good way. Of course, it should be done well, which is why it's so important to have a really good credit history for a business, because that can make a difference about how you will appear to banks for them to provide you the liquidity, the funds that you can reinvest in the business for growth. And having understanding of cash flows. Too often, we all have clients who don't pay their bills on time, and expenses have to be paid no matter what. Employees have to be paid salary. Having a really good understanding of the cash flows. So that's kind of all part of a business plan, which has, like, the operating business plan as well as the financial business plan. And it's these are all for business owners. Like, it's good to get professional help in this, because we're all too attached to our ideas. Have an outside perspective of what the company does, who the customers are, what is the target market, and the growth potential in that market. How will the operations be run? What are the fixed expenses or of operating expenses? What are variable expenses? So there's a lot that goes in there, and then understanding the financial aspect of it, the revenue, the expenses, the growth in profits and profit margins. So these are sort of all important tips for business owners. They're financial tips, but they're also general strategy and operating tips, because they're so overlapping that it's really hard to keep one from the other. And generally, people should keep their personal finances separate from their business finances. So don't borrow from your personal to fund the business. Try to take that loan. Try to keep that separate, so that you're not making it harder in the future for your own personal life, financial life.
Along those lines of keeping things separate, is the business credit score and your personal credit score something different?
So your personal credit score is, yes, what helps you get the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. The business credit score is really, it's about what your borrowing is, like debt to equity. The lower that ratio is, the better terms you'll get if you go to borrow more money. So in that sense, it's not a credit score. It's like financial ratios that help determine the health and future borrowing capacity of the business. In a sense, credit score is also that. it's what your income is, how good are you at paying your credit card bills, because that sort of gives an indication of your capacity to take on lend more loans or borrowing and so forth. Right.
And before we transition into nonprofit founders and leaders, in both cases, how often should one revisit their financial situation for their business and or their
Yeah.
individual?
At least every year. So it's a very good idea to do a business strategy at the start of the year and an assessment at the end of the year, where you look at, like, okay, this what has been happening with my income statements, like, oh, what was my revenues and what were my expenses like, how much taxes did I pay, is this formation LLC or C Corp, is this the right formation? Has something changed in the tax laws that would motivate me to take a look at that? So looking at it at the end of the year, looking back, and then at the beginning of the year, looking forward, forecasting what it is my goals are. Do I have what I need to get me going? So at the very least, like 2 times a year is a very good exercise. And then one can always have like checkpoints in the middle of the year to see where am I towards my goal as a mid-year review. But as we all know, if goals are not written, it's really hard to know what it is I'm aspiring for. And it's even more important in a business, because that's the difference about working in the business versus working on the business.
Mhm.
That's 2 times you work on that.
Yeah, very, very hard to work in the business and on the business and have that ratio. Let's pivot a little bit for some distinctions for nonprofit founders.
Yep. So for nonprofit founders, this is something I learned on my way as I was on the board of nonprofits. It's actually, most of us can assume like getting on a board of a nonprofit is just easy. I'm going to volunteer some time, and that's that. As a board, one takes on quite a substantial amount of responsibility and accountability and sort of financial, should I say, there is a financial responsibility on the board. When I first joined, I didn't really understand that. So, understanding what kind of board it is, whether there is some general liability and director and officers insurance in place, because, as much as we'd like to think we're just volunteering our time, if some mismanagement leads to some adverse outcomes, you're not completely free of personally liable for that.
I did not know that until we
Yeah.
had a pre-chat about this. And I was put on boards early on, really
Mhm.
to serve in a marketing capacity, but and I haven't been on any recently, but I would imagine in the future I will give myself that opportunity. But I had no idea. And
Yeah.
that was a great point to have someone check out before
Yeah.
they dive in.
And so that covers, and most good nonprofits have it, which covers the officers and board members. If they're employees, then there should be some workers' compensation. Someone could fall and break a leg. There could be a
Hmm.
lawsuit. So those are some things to protect yourself. We all want to do good, but not to the point where it would personally affect us financially, right? They
Right.
are, for yourselves, you can get your umbrella policy that protects you as well in some of these aspects. But in general, we use the same idea as budgeting. As a board of a nonprofit, one should know what are the sources of revenues. So, like at the Women's Club, for instance, we have this amazing annual house tour. We used to raise, we used to originally raise upwards of $100,000 annually. It was diminishing over time as people are getting less comfortable about opening their homes and lots of other factors. But then came COVID, where that was not an option. I was one of our biggest sources of fundraising. So having diverse sources to fundraise always is a good idea. COVID made us very aware of how limiting certain things can be. So that's another idea, is as a board, have many methods to fundraise. have more social media, digital methods to fundraise, as well as the more choices getting available. PayPal offers some, you can use their platform as a nonprofit and not pay those hefty transaction fees. So exploring all that's always very good. And a lot of times what happens is people don't recognize their programming cost. A lot of times we are fundraising just to cover expenses. So having nonprofits be really lean in the way they run, so that the majority of the fundraising goes to the mission of the nonprofit. So understanding the program cost, understanding perhaps separating them out based on what we do, where the fundraising is coming from, can make all the difference. I just noticed we went over 30 minutes.
Oh, that's okay. The information I think is valuable, and this gets shared in lots of ways otherwise.
Gotcha.
So I'm okay if you're okay with that.
Absolutely, I am, for sure.
No, this has been a different kind of conversation than we, let's say, typically have had on the show, but I love it. So there was something that you said that made me want to say something about nonprofits.
Mhm.
And what you said was, it's important to be lean so a lot of the fundraising can go to the cause. I really think that applies to businesses as well, but in the reverse, nonprofits are businesses. This is my little soapbox for them. Folks who think profits have different needs and stresses and electric bills, and yes, people give them discounts here and there, but unrestricted funds going to a nonprofit that you trust, you don't want to give money to a nonprofit that you don't trust to begin with, so they can put it in where they need it. I mean, I know it from the marketing perspective. Not everyone can give them everything for free. Not every accountant can do everything for free. Not everyone. So just my little plea on behalf of nonprofits everywhere, folks, is they are businesses.
Mhm.
And people don't go into nonprofits because they think they're going into a business. They're going in to help people. But in the end of the day, they need to run a business, just like a school
Yes.
business and other people. So
Yes.
that's my personal little
Yeah, and I've seen nonprofits run really well and really poorly. And it is, when run like a business, real understanding of the cost, the controls, the transparency, the accountability, and the real, it is really a business. The distinction is it has some tax advantages as a nonprofit, but it doesn't take away the expenses and the money raised that will go to whatever the mission of the nonprofit is. That's just like a business. So
right.
you're absolutely right. And it's, yeah, it can be run really well and it can be run really poorly, and it's really a function of the boards and how well they do the job. Hmm.
So I want to talk about early career young adults. And
Yes.
I think you've given so much for them to think about. And in some ways, thinking, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
It's very, when we started out, I hate to say, we walked up the hill barefoot and all that. It's not that, but it was a different time.
Yes.
And when I bought my first house, the deposit was $5,000. And
Mhm.
there's nothing that can be at this time.
Yeah.
So, but what I think that you have to share with young people is this mindset that I really was struck by your way of thinking, and the fact that you were, hired by a think tank to think and to look at things broadly.
Hmm.
Again, everything you talked about is discipline, consistency, commitment, courage and tenacity. That's something I feel that I have. And I feel like if you keep showing up till they tell you not to, and do what you said you were going to do and do it again tomorrow. And yeah, you're going to get a little, disappointment here and there, or big disappointments. We've got to find a way to keep on going. But what would you say to the young folks today
Hmm.
that, might be a little overwhelmed with what you
Hmm.
laid out here, and just something about for them?
Yeah. No, Nancy, that is a very good question. Young generation is living through an incredibly stressful, transformative time. Not just because of COVID, the technology trends, the trends in employment. There isn't any loyalty either direction. All of this gig economy that we talk about, it works for companies sometimes more than the employees. There isn't any retirement accounts, there isn't sometimes health insurance or coverage. There's a lot going on. And understanding, like, okay, it's not just a job. I need to understand, how is this setting me up for what I want to do? And it's okay to change what you do, but always having a vision. Like, one, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Is it adding to my skill set? Is it helping me grow my earning capacity? Those are always should be asked. Like, it's okay to not be paid well, as long as you feel this is setting you up for something that will down the road. um, so I've and understanding, like, what kind of majors to take in college, developing skills that are marketable. Now with social media, it's called social media because it's social, it's media, and one is always positioning themselves as a business. Each individual is now a business. You've got to figure out, how am I putting money into myself as expenses, so that I can grow myself as a business in the future. Each one of us, there used to be the phrase army of one, we're business of one, every one of us at every stage. Um, Starting very early, if your company or you're able to access health savings account, that you put it grows tax deferred. Because one of the things we're concerned about is we don't know what social security, Medicare might look like for them. So
Hmm.
set yourself up, particularly like putting into HSAs, which let deferred money growing, which can be taken tax free for medical reasons, is fantastic. um, we don't think things will go down badly in social security, but the retirement age has been being pushed up for that reason, because the working number of people working supporting the retiring people is just going to become even more challenging as the baby boomers retire. I don't think I have a solution to that. I just want them to be aware of that, so they're keeping and building their nest eggs as well. um yeah, it's so, I mean, in terms of having managing debt, always being really smart with this from the beginning. Whether it's student loans, so we had that great news where some of the student loans were forgiven, but 10,000's a drop in a bucket. It's nothing. um and the real issue is cost of college is too much. That's really not going to make a difference. Understanding, am I borrowing for the kinds of degrees that set me up for the jobs that will allow me to pay it back? Otherwise, no. Take that trade school education or something else which will provide more fungible, marketable skills. And again, I'm not saying no philosophy majors, but have something in addition to it: finance, economics, engineering, whatever that might be, because there's only so many people we need for those kind of majors. So, and then, I mean, here I don't have a good handle on it, but there's so many ways we hear every time how marketing has changed entirely. And viral marketing, becoming an influencer, understanding all of those new technology trends. Where is the metaverse going? A long time ago, that was when I was a young person, and I had many Luddites around me, older people, who were like, "No, I'm never going to buy something on the internet." Well, see how that changed.
Same. Now
So
I'm so annoyed if I can't do it on this.
exactly. So, same idea with the metaverse. Like, at this time, it's a very alien concept. Do I want experiences in virtual environment? Most, I can tell you now, I am the old person, and for the vast majority, I don't. But you can't change and stop technology from transforming what will be available. So being open to that, understanding that. So, you're in a position to kind of take advantage. So there is not so much financial tips. The financial tips is the same that applies, like I said at the beginning, but setting yourself up so that you have a better understanding of your earning capacity in the future, how you're aligned with the transformation in technology, and therefore how businesses will need people, what kinds of skills they'll need in the future. That's sort of and then just creating your own little nest eggs, figure it out, be disciplined. This money is for healthcare. This money is for retirement. This money is for my professional development. This is for, you're right. I mean, buying a home right now with the rising interest rates, and home prices haven't come down. So it's not, prices are expensive, and cost of borrowing is really going up. So suddenly a lot of people got priced out of buying homes. So figuring all that out. I mean, I know I wanted to end on a positive.
Well, we are going to end on a positive, and because it is positive, right? Now, we also had, when I came out of school, there was a recession. So
That's right.
here's the positive I want to end with. I went to college. But I got my first job because I had a trade skill, something I learned in high school. I knew how to type. I was either going to be a secretary or a teacher. I went to college and I went into marketing, and I was determined to work on Madison Avenue in New York City in advertising, and I did, but I didn't quite know when to apply properly. So I got myself in there by typing for a huge international account. Wow. And so that is the mindset that I want to share here. Everything. And Anita, I appreciate that you went overtime with me. I enjoyed this chat. Mm-hmm. But in order to do what Anita's talking about, we need to take one step at a time. We need to be aware of where we're at, whether we're an individual, a nonprofit, a founder of a nonprofit, or a business owner, an employee. As you said, we are our own business today. I always thought, even as an employee, I'm choosing to be an employee. I'm choosing to have one client. I don't know why I thought that right out of the bat, but it's just how I thought. So that's why I didn't stay being an employee for all that long. And that was just how I was wired. Right. But all this is possible with being realistic, accepting and continuing and consistency. And both Anita and I help individuals grow their businesses, which in turn grow their finances, which help them hopefully to enjoy their life and navigate the ups and downs that will come there, as well as individuals, small businesses, nonprofits, mid-sized companies. So our contact information has been scrolling here. For those of you who have stayed with us this entire time, we thank you for that. We're going to be sharing excerpts of this and this conversation in its entirety, again, on our social media and emails and other ways. And if you have questions about it, leave them in the comments. We'll be engaging with you and responding back. So Anita, I wish you the best of this day and your business and the future, and to everyone listening, the same. I'm Nancy Sargent, your host of Milestone Mindset Live and founder of Sargent Marketing.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Anita.